Welcome everybody, and today we're going to do the definitions for Vocabulary Unit 13. This is the second half of the list of the terms that are coming from Shakespeare's play, The Tempest. An archaic word that we don't often hear today, a knave is a scoundrel, a person who doesn't necessarily have any kind of scruples, a rogue, if you will, a dishonest and unscrupulous man is a knave. For example, you could probably go back to sophomore year and you can think in your mind about Tom Walker. He could be considered a rogue, a knave. He even tries to cheat the devil to some degree of having his soul taken away at the end of the story. Pardon me. Malignant, you can see the root word mal here, and anything with mal, malicious, malevolent, malignant, they always seem to have some kind of negative connotation. So a lot of times with regard to diseases, people will talk about something that's malignant, and it means that it's negative, it's virulent, it is infectious, it will spread. It's the worst thing you could hear if you're a patient who has been diagnosed with cancer. If the tumor is malignant, it means that it's bad, it's not going to be helpful to you. And a malignant person is an evil person, one who is malevolent, one who is spiteful, evil, hostile. All of those words come into play when you think about malignant. Manifold means many and various. I think back in sophomore year, this was part of your word list when you were doing the Puritans, because there was discussion of God's manifold gifts. You know, the implication that the implications of this decision were manifold. There were many and various consequences to it. In the opening scene of the play, the mariners, represented by the boatswain, yell to the noblemen, "Get below decks, you mar our labor." To mar something is to hinder it, to impair it, to spoil it, to ruin it. And so when they're saying that these noblemen are marring their labor, it means they're in the way. Non-pareil means having no equal. So something that is non-pareil is unrivaled. You can talk about somebody's beauty being non-pareil. It means there is no match for it, having no equal. You stand out among everyone, having no match or equal. He was a non-pareil storyteller. We could say that about Gaka, right? In the Storytelling Stone. He winds up becoming a non-pareil storyteller. We can use this also, that's in the adjective form. We could also use this as a noun and simply mean a matchless person, an unrivaled person. Calling someone the non-pareil of all quarterbacks means that they are unrivaled. An unrivaled or matchless person. They're the best in their field, which actually brings us down to paragon in a way, because somebody who is a paragon, or a thing that is paragon, so it could be a person or thing, you're saying that they're the perfect example of something, right? A person or thing that is regarded as the perfect example of. In other words, they have no comparison, right? I think you've had the word quintessence or epitome. They are the epitome of something. You know, they are the epitome of intelligence, or the paragon of virtue, like Mona Giovanna is the paragon of virtue. That's why she won't pay any attention to Federico in the beginning of the story, because she's married. Speaking of marriage, nuptial means anything relating to marriage or weddings. It's been said that it was only the love and the impending marriage or wedding of Romeo and Juliet that united those two families, the Capulets and the Montagues, right? Odious. Ugh. When something is odious, it is extremely unpleasant. It is something that is hateful, something that is repulsive. One of the characters in the Aeneid who might be considered somewhat hateful or odious is Pyrrhus, right? Pyrrhus comes in and slaughters Polites right in front of his father's eyes. And then when Priam starts to say to him, oh, you can't be related to Achilles, you certainly don't even have the same kind of, kindness in you or mercy in you as your father did. He says, oh yeah, well then why don't you go to hell and tell my father about it, right? Nasty stuff. And again, all these are tying in. Speaking of hell, we can use the word perdition for hell, because perdition is the state of eternal punishment, the state of eternal damnation. The entire Inferno is about perdition. Notice I didn't say the Divine Comedy, because the Divine Comedy will take you into purgatory and paradise. But the Inferno is definitely about perdition. If you prattle on and on, it means that you babble on and on. To prattle is to babble, to chatter. Prattle is foolish, inconsequential talk. That stop prattling about all these inconsequent things, right? Precursor, something that comes before, right? A person or thing that comes before. We could use the expression a forerunner, a harbinger, right? If you remember 11th grade British literature with your romantics, you could say Thomas Gray in Elegy in a Country Churchyard was a writer who's the forerunner of the Romantic period, or even William Blake for that matter, with his Lamb and the Tiger, Songs of Innocence and Experience. He's a person that sort of introduced, he came before the Romantic period. He's kind of, the harbinger, the announcer of it. If you say to someone, well, you know what, it's my prerogative that I'm going to do this. Once upon a time, owning a car was the prerogative only of the rich. Prerogative means a right or a privilege. And that right or privilege was only given to a particular group of people. Or a particular individual. So owning something like a car a long time ago, at the beginning of the 20th century, was the prerogative of the rich, because it was a right or a privilege that was given only to those who were excessively wealthy. To rectify, you can see rect here. This is to correct. Okay, so to rectify is to make right, to amend, to correct. Sometimes you can make mistakes that cannot be rectified, like Macbeth. Macbeth's mistakes are not rectifiable. He can't change them. He's got to deal with them. Sanctimonious, we see a word that usually has something to do with religion or sacredness, but when you're being sanctimonious, it's a fake way of being holy. So it means that you're making a show of being morally superior. I keep coming back to The Devil and Tom Walker, because at the end of the story, you might remember Tom becomes a fervent churchgoer, but we know that this conversion is just a sanctimonious display, because he's not really serious about his faith, right? How do we know that? Just think about the end of the story. When that person comes to ask him for a couple of extra weeks in order to pay off his mortgage, where is the Bible? Where is Tom's Bible? It's underneath all the mortgage papers. So his money making was much more important to him than his religion. So that conversion was really just sanctimonious. A spendthrift is a person who spends money wastefully. Think about the biblical story of the prodigal son. He is a spendthrift once he gets his inheritance, and then he comes back with his tail between his legs because he's, squandered everything. And the pigs in his father's house are treated better than he had been treated when he had no money. Temperance is something you probably talked about in your history classes. Temperance is refraining from or abstinence from alcohol. There was a temperance movement in the early 1900s that you probably have studied in a historical sense. So you're staying away from alcohol if you're practicing temperance. And our play is called The Tempest, and everybody knows that a tempest is a storm. So when a person is behaving in a tempestuous manner, it means that you're characterized by storminess, right? Characterized by strong and turbulent and conflicting emotions. In other words, you're in a spin, right? Think about the behavior of some characters that we've read. One minute they seem to be calm, and the next minute they can flip their lid. That's tempestuous. To upbraid someone is to scold them, right? To find fault with. Ronsard finds fault or upbraids Hélène because she is not seizing the moment to be with him. She's ignoring him, not paying attention to his verses, and someday she'll be an old crone and regret it. So live and pluck the roses while you can today. To usurp is to take a position by force. And usually this deals with politics, right? So to take a position of power by force. If you're thinking about it in terms of the Tempest, I think many of you remember that Antonio is the one who usurps the dukedom from Prospero all those years ago, those 12 years ago. Vanity is excessive pride. We're always cautioned against vanity. It could be also to take excessive pride in, or admiration. You're vain. Admiration of one's own appearance or one's belongings. As Anne Bradstreet chides herself, scolds herself, upbraids herself for being upset when her house burns down. I don't know if you guys remember that poem, Upon the Burning of Our House. But she said, all's vanity, right? She realizes that her true home is in heaven. If you have a younger brother or sister, perhaps they vex you. To vex is to annoy, to irritate, to get under somebody's skin, right? To incense, to make them mad. This is an S. I know it doesn't really look that clear, but hopefully you can tell. You know what I'll just do? I'll write it again, because I don't want you to misspell it. Think about Tiresias. Oedipus is vexed by Tiresias because he doesn't believe what Tiresias has to say. And he calls him a decrepit fortune teller, teller of false pennies, collector of false pennies and all this kind of stuff. He's vexed by him. To keep vigil is to keep watch. We talk about the Easter vigil, right? We talk about Gatsby keeping vigil the night of the accident, waiting outside in the bushes to make sure that Tom doesn't hurt Daisy. Boy, does he get that wrong, huh? Vigilance is the state of being careful, the state of being watchful. That's such a great scene in Gatsby too. I remember talking about it with some of you when I had you as sophomores, that he does seem to be almost like a medieval knight, pursuing Daisy as the Grail and waiting outside, keeping vigil to protect her. But he could not vouchsafe her security, right? To vouchsafe is to give or to grant, because he misunderstood those Buchanans completely. To give or to grant to someone. That's one definition of vouchsafe. It's a blessing vouchsafed to him by heaven. I could also say that vouchsafe is to reveal or to disclose. I think that one is probably used more often, to reveal or to disclose. You never vouchsafed that interesting information before. You never revealed it before. I think Miranda will say that to her father, that she's been waiting for 12 years to hear about their history, and Prospero has never vouchsafed their background before, Okay, so there you have it. The words for Unit 13. Thank you.